sewing the dump truck block from the Mighty Construction Site Quilt. Quick heads up, if you're brand new to foundation paper piecing, I'd recommend starting with like the traffic cone or excavator block first. Those tutorials have a bit more step-by-step detail to help you get comfortable. But one of the things I love about foundation paper piecing is that once you get the hang of the process, it's beautifully repetitive. So even if this is one of your first blocks, you'll find your rhythm fast. Let's go build the dump truck. First, we're going to start out by printing out our pattern. You want to make sure it's a 100% scale, and we like to use newsprint paper because it's thinner and easier to work with. Start out by cutting around the dotted lines. Unless you have a pattern that's cut off like this, then you're going to want to cut off one side of it, and then you will tape that onto the other piece of paper using that printer line as a guide to make sure that you are taping your pattern correctly and keeping it the right size. After you got it taped, then you can go ahead and cut that out around the dotted lines to get your different sections for your project. The next part is personal preference. I like to color mine before cutting mine out. You can cut yours out and then color it, whatever works. We're going to start with our first section. I chose this one just because it has two pieces, so it's easy to start with. You're going to get your first piece of paper and have it pretty sides facing out, so down towards your table, not facing the paper, and then I pin it on there just to hold it on there. Then you're going to get your second piece of fabric and put it pretty sides facing each other. So the pretty sides are facing each other, and then you're going to cut along that black line. It's very important that you try to be as precise as possible when sewing across that black line. After you're done with that, you can cut around your seam allowance and you've got your block finished. We're going to start with our second block here. This one is E, section E if you want to follow along. Again, I pinned my first section on there, pretty sides facing towards the desk or away from you, away from that paper, and then you're going to get your second piece of fabric and put it pretty sides together and line it up. Make sure you kind of check to make sure when you open it up it's going to cover the entire area you need it to cover. That one didn't cover the entire area, so I needed to get a new piece. I needed it to be a little bit bigger. This one worked just fine, so then I'm going to pinch that there, put it in my sewing machine, and again try to sew as accurately along that black line as possible. All right, so there we've got it. You've got my seam right here. Open it up, double check. Yep, see that covers the entire area. So I'm going to press or set my seam and then iron that fabric open so that it lays nice and flat. And then if you want to, you can trim around your pieces, but since there's only three of them, 3 pieces of fabric, I like to just do that at the very end. If there's a lot of pieces, it's nice to kind of cut it back as you're sewing to reduce bulk and just excess fabric moving around. All right, so I've got those pretty sides together. I'm going to line them up, and then I sew along that black line. Again, we press our fabric, trim it around that seam allowance. Make sure you do not cut that paper. That seam allowance is really important for when you connect those sections. And now we've got those two done. As I mentioned before, this is one of the last blocks I'm going to go through step by step, just because it is a very repeatable process. It's repetitive. So once you get the idea, pretty sides together, sew along the line, open it up, press your fabric, then you can repeat the process. Because this has a lot more pieces, I am going to show you how I trim back the excess fabric. So I sew along the line, and then I'm going to fold my fabric or my pattern back, leaving that fabric there so that I can trim it off. I do leave a 1/4 inch seam allowance, so I don't cut it right at the paper. I add a 1/4 inch on there before I cut it. And then that way you only have a 1/4 inch underneath that fabric, and it helps reduce the bulk. So again, press the seams, press your fabric, and then we've got steps 1 and 2 done, and then we're going to go to number 3. So again, pretty sides together, you're going to line that up so that when you sew across the black line, you're catching both pieces of fabric. I've got that sewn in there, and then I'm just going to again fold my pattern back along the line that I just sewed, and then put my ruler on there, add a 1/4 inch, and cut off that excess fabric. Press, and then repeat. Like I said, it's very repetitive, so it's not difficult once you get the hang of it. It's a process that you can build upon itself. All right, we're gonna go to this next one here. I'm adding my fabric. Again, pretty sides together. Make sure that you cover that line, and when you open it up, it's going to cover that piece that you need it to cover. So exactly along that black line, that is where you can get yourself messed up, is if you kind of deviate from that pattern line. And then you're just going to keep doing that same process over and over and over again until you've built a dump truck. I did continue filming this part as a time lapse to kind of show the process, how we're building things, getting it section by section. It would be great if it actually went this fast. I mean, the projects I could make if it didn't take as long as it does, but there is a beauty in being able to just repeat steps, get your fabric pieces, put that on there, and get into autopilot. I find it very relaxing and soothing once you understand the process. I can understand how it could be frustrating at first or a little bit tricky at first, but I promise if you stick with it, it is a really fun method to use, and you can just get more and more intricate in your pieces as you get more confident in your skills. All right, now we've got all of our sections done. I've trimmed around the outside of them so they have the seam allowance and laid them out so that we can start attaching them. I'm gonna start with these first two just because it's the first row. Really, when it comes to assembly, it doesn't matter how you put it together necessarily, as long as, at least with this block specifically, you go the top row, the middle row, then the bottom row, just so you're not creating any Y seams. I like to put my pieces together and then use a pin to set the corners. So I'll put a pin in one side and then through the other side to make sure that my corners are put together. And then I will clip along that line so that I can not only double check to make sure any of the continuous lines that are going from one section to the other are in fact going to be seamless and look like it's flowing, but also I can make sure that when I open it up and double check it, I've figured out which line I'm going to follow with my sewing machine and that I am as accurate as possible. This step is really, really, really important to take your time because this can make or break your pieces from making it look like a continuous image, or a couple pieces of fabric sewn together and it looks a little wonky. So again, this is my top row. You could go in whatever order you want. You just want to make sure that you're going from left to right or right to left. Same with this bottom row as well. Again, personal preference. So we went across, we have those three sections, and then I am again double checking where are my continuous lines. What do I need to check for, like for example, this right here, we want to make sure those are perfectly lined up when I am assembling these blocks together. And that's your dump truck block. This is one of 9 blocks in the Mighty Construction Site Quilt. So if you're working through the full series, you're making great progress. One quick side note, if you're using the construction site bundle patterns, you might notice a few extra numbers or additional sections compared to what you see here. Don't worry, the overall process is the same. It's just a couple more steps. As always, add your fabric, sew, flip, trim, and repeat. You've got this. If you're enjoying this series, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next block. But until then, happy sewing.